So as advertised, tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about the heart. And sometimes you'll see or read of the heart in terms of your meditation practice as conceived of having four faces, facing different directions. In each of the four faces or aspects of the heart, sees and connects with the world in a slightly different way. But because they're all part of this kind of generalized energy that we kind of try to define and call it heart, they are connected. They're not separate. So this conception began in the Buddhists took it from, I believe, Hindu mythology and the Hindu god Brahma. And Brahma had, in that myth, had four faces, and each face represented one aspect of unselfish love. And that the Buddhist kind of teachings incorporated that. And each of those faces is exalted and cultivated in practice. And over the years, and I think things have really changed, that those four faces of love kind of were diminished in terms of how Buddhist practices were taught. But that's really not the case anymore. There are kind of specialized teachings and practices like this retreat I'm teaching where that's what the focus is. So in the Pali language, these four energies or aspects of the heart are metta, karuna, mudita, and upekkha. Metta is represented or translated as loving friendliness or loving kindness. Bhante Gunaratana, a teacher of mine, always used to argue when he'd say, stop calling it loving kindness because you're mixing it up with compassion, karuna. It's loving friendliness, so he'd always say. So I got that kind of spinning in my mind. But you'll hear it as loving kindness in most places. And mudita, karuna's compassion, mudita is appreciative joy. And the last is equanimity, upekkha, which kind of is the glue that holds them together. And I'll get into that a little bit. So this god Brahma is said, the word Brahma Viharas, Vihara means dwelling place. So the dwelling place of the God, the abidings of the gods. They're also called, you'll hear them called the four immeasurables. They're sometimes the beautiful emotions. So there's a lot of names for these, and they appear in a lot of Eastern philosophy in different ways. But it's a misnomer to think of these energies as weak or soft, because they're really not. And the god Brahma itself was a creator god, very powerful and strong. And when you get into the nuances of practicing these, it takes courage and strength. It's not all just kind of gushing with a lovely feeling, although there's a lot of that involved. Nyanaponika Thera, he gives a definition, which I'll read to you, but he's an interesting character himself. He was born in Germany around the turn of the last century, 1900, 1901. And he was a single child in a Jewish family. And so as things began to deteriorate in the early 30s, he moved. But prior to that, he had gotten a hold of some books on Buddhism, and there weren't many books around, and he had this burning interest, and he was reading everything that he could. So in the early 30s, he immigrates to Sri Lanka and becomes a monk and is practicing there. And when Germany invades Poland, he did everything he could, and his father had died, but he got his mother and other relatives out and brought them all to Sri Lanka. And of course, if you were German, in a lot of allied countries, you were put in internment camps. So he and his relatives were put in internment camps like we did to the Japanese here in lots of places in the world. We weren't the only ones doing this. So he, when the war was over, he began doing a lot of beautiful translations. He practiced a lot. He was the main teacher for Bhikkhu Bodhi, who's probably the main translator in the world right now of Buddhist scriptures. So, but he says this. He said, these four attitudes are said to be excellent or sublime because they are the right or ideal way of conduct towards living beings. They provide, in fact, the answer to all situations arising from social contact. They are the great removers of tension, the great peacemakers in social conflict, and the great healers of wounds suffered in the struggle of existence. They level social barriers, build harmonious communities, awaken slumbering magnanimity long forgotten, revive joy and hope long abandoned, and promote human brotherhood against the forces of egotism. So that's a pretty lofty description of what's available in the cultivation of these energies in us. It's kind of a description of the manifestation of the better angels of our nature. You've probably heard that phrase thrown around these days. They're all pretty ordinary, actually, and you experience them all the time. Sometimes they'll pass by and you won't notice that they're happening. Each morning, when the weather's not horrible, I'll meditate outside on my deck. And being an old person, I sleep lightly. So I'm up, before dawn happens, and I have my little routines and stuff that I do, and get my green tea, and then I put the bird seed out and clean the bird bath. For years I've been trying my animal communication to try to instruct these birds that you don't poop in the bird bath. Why would you do that? But they keep doing it every single day, so it calls up my equanimity, and so I clean that. But so sitting there, I'm going to kind of demonstrate these four aspects. How they're just so ordinary. Just sitting there, when the sun is beginning to throw some photons our way, and the birds, a few of them start, and then there's this cacophony of sound that begins to happen. It just kind of throws my heart open. And there's this crescendo as the sun kind of breaks through. There's just this feeling of friendliness to these creatures. They're doing their thing. And it's the kind of friendliness, there's no strings attached. I don't want anything from them. It's just this, this kind of warmth that I feel towards them. And most of the time my eyes are closed. I'm not even seeing them all around. So it's loving friendliness gets activated in a simple situation like that. And then also behind me, not too far behind me, is a sliding glass door, and there's windows, and occasionally a bird will run into it. Now, if they've just been feeding, they're not very far away, they don't get hurt, but that sound immediately activates compassion. You know, I want to do something or reach out, or I'm wishing they're not hurt, or hoping they can recover, etc. You know, that's like compassion immediately. You know, and on an editorial note, they seldom really get hurt in the morning there at all, and they usually just get maybe stunned a little bit. And I have a bird cage if needed. And for concussion protocol, I'll put them in there and they can kind of work themselves back around. So, and then the birds seem to come in waves of different types. And the goldfinches, those little yellow birds, they kind of come in groups. And they have I really love their song. And it seems so joyful. And they just sing this trill back and forth, and they're all over, and they love the thistle seed and the millet, and they're just like chowing down and singing back and forth. And it just feels like they're having a great time. You know, it's like they're there, there's food, and they're singing to each other, and there's joy. I feel the joy in their song, you know. So that's the arising of appreciative joy. They're having a joyful experience. I'm partaking in their joy. I'm not jealous about their joy. It's just there. And automatic. It's easy, you know. And those of you that are feeding birds, you know that there's oftentimes a lot of aggression around the feeders. You know, the blue jays, the starlings, the crows. When they come into town, you know, they're going to do their thing. And so sometimes I'll I won't have balance or equanimity for them. It's like, come on, you know, give some space, you know. But most of the time I can relax into a kind of balance. Well, this is nature. This is how it works, you know. I can remember one time just the idiocy of trying to push nature around. I was snorkeling and I came across this big bait ball. A bait ball is these small silver fish, you know, maybe they're 6 inches long, and they all come together to protect each other. Now, it doesn't make sense to me, because what happens is the predator fish, the tarpon and some of the bigger fish, they're just kind of smashing through there and getting mouthfuls of stuff. So this particular day I thought, well, I'm going to try to protect this bait ball. Now, I just wore myself out, you know, and I could scare away the predator fish, but it was like, this is nature. You know, this is what happens when you try to fight nature. You just get worn out. It's kind of crazy. So, so the birds, they're doing their thing. Some are more aggressive and they take over, and, you know, bringing some balance to that. The recognition, that's just the way it is now, you know. So, yeah, just telling a lot of bird stories. I was thinking of, really took me a bit to have equanimity. I have these bluebird houses all over on posts. And before I put the metal, I have this kind of grate that protects them. The black snakes would get up in there, and I'd hear some squawking, and I'd look, and there'd be like the tail of a black snake out of the bluebird hole. And it's like, And then go down and kind of pull him or her out. And there was always too late, you know, that they had either their omelet if it was eggs, or they had pâté if they were little. And but that's nature. You know, it's just the way it rolls, you know. So I've protected them, but it's just, that's it. And I kind of mourned the baby birds, but it all kind of arises and passes. So when these Brahma Viharas can be cultivated and develop some strength in us, it really can be profound. They have they enable you to keep love in the forefront, really, or forms of love in the forefront of all your social encounters. Those aspects of compassion or loving friendliness, sympathetic joy, equanimity, With loving friendliness or loving kindness, you learn how to maintain a healthy goodwill to, even for those that are hostile. And that's where part of the challenge is. It's easy for us to pick out our best friend or our dog or somebody that we just have a clear, clean relationship with. But this practice challenges us to extend ourselves. And so, like on a retreat, we'd work with ourselves, we'd work with a dear loved one, we'd work with someone who is a benefactor, we'd work with someone who's a neutral person, like the male person or something like that. And then we'd work with a difficult person, starting with people that are just a little annoying, and then working ourselves to difficult people. And it's a lifetime of practice, because it's not so easy. You can conjure up your favorite unpopular political figure. This whole country is so charged one way or the other. And that's a challenge, to bring up these kind of energies. It doesn't mean that we're doormats in any way, or that we don't resist when we feel we need to resist, or push back, or fight. So, with compassion, you're able to meet and touch into not only your suffering but the suffering of others, and not turn away. In appreciative joy, there's challenges there too. Can you really partake in the joy of somebody else? How will you really feel if your neighbor wins the lottery? You might feel great if it's your child that wins the lottery, but that kind of gnarly neighbor, they're thrilled and happy. Can you partake in that? And equanimity offers the balance in all those situations where you're kind of powerless. Where there may be someone close to you suffering terribly, or you're working with the environmental stresses. You're doing the best you can, and it's out of your hands. That's where equanimity, the balance, the calm comes in. Gil Fronsdale, a really good teacher, says this: all these capacities are said to be of the heart, because they are dispositions deeper and more stable than thoughts about loving. They are deep when not entangled in the shallowness of selfishness. And they're stable when not compromised by fear, aversion, and craving. They involve attitudes and intentions that arise out of the social instincts embedded in our physiology, in our neurology and psychology. Because they appear easily when we're at ease, they can feel like the natural working of our inner life. When we're free from stress, the presence of any of the Brahma Viharas is deeply satisfying and nurturing, supporting relaxation and a sense of well-being. Maybe the simplest way to enhance these natural energies is just to notice when they've arisen and pause. And kind of internally name it. You see a friend approach. You've arranged to meet them for tea or something like that. You see them approach. There's a whole constellation and activation of feelings and sensations that are going on in you that are of the ilk of this loving kindness. there may even be, there's a smile on your face when you first see them approaching, And if you notice your heart, in that moment, it might be undefended, And there's this subtle extension of warmth coming from you, helping create this relational field that's a safe, friendly field that the two of you are creating together. So that's that loving friendliness, but we've got to notice it. Oh, that's what I'm feeling when I see my buddy, or I, see a friend somewhere. Or you're watching a child run. They're running really fast and they fall on the pavement. I mean, bingo. Your compassion is like right there. It's like the bird hitting the glass. There's an earnest wish for their pain to be relieved. It's just natural. But are we noticing it? Oh, look at that. This is the activation of compassion. And you can feel it in the body, and just kind of hanging with it for a little while, What are the emotions and sensations and thoughts associated with it when it has arisen? Each time we're able to catch it with our mindfulness, that's why mindfulness is such a great thing. We practice these basic, simple meditations, but they allow us to be more present for when things are happening. And when we're trying to cultivate something like love in its different forms, we can notice it. And when we notice it, we it helps our nervous system kind of wire to it. It becomes, the pathway to it is more direct and instantaneous, and it grows and strengthens, and sympathetic joy or appreciative joy is another one. When it happens, we can notice it. So when I was finishing up this talk today, again, a bird bath story. Bluebirds love bird baths. They won't eat from the feeders, unless I put out the right stuff. But boy, they love to splash around. It looks like they're just having a great time. And so, watching that, connecting to that joy. There's 7 billion people. If we can find a way to connect to the joy of others, it's going to be much more fun than just looking for our own joy. And that's all we're paying attention to, But it's a challenge like the other ones. So that pause, letting our nervous system know, oh, this is appreciative joy. Look at that, And in those moments where there may be some chaos going on around you, and if you notice, hey, I'm pretty calm in the middle of all this. It can happen. Happens naturally. And just notice, oh, this must be equanimity. I'm balanced. I'm calm. I can handle this. And so we feel what that's like. And the neural pathways start to get greased. So that begins to generalize in other chaotic situations or whatever, that we can be chill. And there are practices to cultivate all of these. So just that simple noticing a value of our mindfulness and to hang out there a little bit, it's really enjoyable when we can catch it, But these energies, like everything else in your meditation practice, they're nuanced. And that's what makes it so interesting. And it's worthy to mention what are the near enemies of these beautiful emotions. And also there's far enemies. I mean, the far enemies are kind of obvious on a continuum. For loving friendliness, the far enemy is all the forms of ill will. I mean, you're not feeling friendly. You're just wishing the worst on somebody or other people, or, And for compassion, the far enemy of compassion is cruelty. And you're not endeavoring to reduce suffering. You're having this kind of arising of cruelty. And appreciative joy is the opposite of that. The far enemy is jealousy. Why did they win the lottery? Damn it. Person's an idiot. I could have done so many wonderful things with that. It's like you can feel the contraction in all of these that are the far enemy. They're easy to see. And for equanimity, for the energy of equanimity and balance, the far enemy is craving or clinging or anxiety or greed. There's no kind of soft acceptance and balance there. It's grasping, pushing. Now, the near enemies, they're a little more subtle because they masquerade as something that you might think, oh, that's nothing wrong with that. And for loving friendliness, it's a selfish attachment. And you think about that a little bit. It's like, I'll extend loving friendliness. This is why these are not so easy. Well, I'll extend loving friendliness to you if you extend it to me. It's kind of like Tony Soprano. I'll do something for you, you do something for me. It's a kind of business arrangement. And we know when we're in one of those kind of things. And we know when it's like opened into a kind of more a more free expression of friendliness. And we can talk a lot about each of these, but it's nuanced. When there's a selfish attachment, there is a little contraction or grasping in there that can be worked with if we notice it. And the near enemy of compassion is pity. And in pity, when we're feeling pity for somebody, we're pretty separate from them. There's me, and I'm above you, and I pity you. There's not a human connection. There's not a we or a us in this suffering together. See how it can masquerade as compassion? Compassion, my favorite definition is the quivering of the heart in response to suffering. Your own or the suffering of others, or the suffering of the environment, or wherever you see it and feel it. Pity's different. It has a kind of toxic, there's me and then there's you feeling to it. So as we learn and cultivate these things, we kind of watch where we are. And the near enemy of appreciative joy, there's kind of maybe some comparisons going on, or there's a little hypocrisy or insincerity in some way. There might be some joy for others, but it's tinged with identification. Like, I have joy for the Red Sox when they win, or my child when they achieve something, but it's kind of closed a little bit, And the near enemy for equanimity is indifference. And you run into somebody who's kind of taken on some New Age philosophy in the wrong way, and somebody has cancer or a terrible disease, and they say, oh, well, that's their karma. That's just the way it rolls. Well, okay, that may be true on some level, but there's a coldness there. That's not equanimity. Equanimity has heart in it. And so if you're curious as to whether you're, for whatever reason, being indifferent, or whether you're having an experience of equanimity, check your heart. Is the heart open? Or have I closed off to protect myself in some way? And sometimes we have to. We get overloaded, so we just kind of shut it off. There's so much suffering and horror, But check the heart. Am I balanced and kind of there completely, and is my heart open or not? There's also a wisdom factor involved in practicing these. Another nuance is, we do these phrases, and we'll do like a short medley, like a 2-minute, 3-minute medley of these. But we do these phrases, wishing for the happiness of others and stuff. But a wise wish for the happiness for others is that they learn something, that they learn what the causes and conditions of happiness are. It's not just getting the new car, or it's not just getting the new shiny this, that, or the other thing. That there's a whole lot to consider of what creates happiness. And it's not just one thing or trying to line up pleasant things endlessly and grasping at them, or pushing away everything that's slightly unpleasant. So there's this wisdom factor, as we practice this. May they come to understand, the conditions that support real happiness. That's what we really want for our loved ones, and as we practice this. So let's just do a 3-minute or 4-minute medley of these. And as I said, on retreats, we'd hit all the categories. We'd work with all the categories, and certain things would come up, and we'd have to work with them. But let's just pick an easy one, a loved one, Even a pet if you want to, but just somebody who you have a kind of easy relationship with, a good friend, not too complicated. But as we get deeply into most of our relationships, they're complicated. But do your best. So just kind of go inside. Close your eyes and feel the aliveness just for a moment. And bring to mind this person. If you can visualize them, good. If visualization isn't your thing, just a felt sense of what it's like to be around your friend or your loved one. And I'll say these phrases. And as I say these phrases, extend from your heart just some warmth, some friendliness to this person in its various flavors, so to speak. And so we'll start with metta, loving friendliness. So picturing this person, and as you breathe, extending from your heart, may you be protected and safe. May you be protected and safe. Extending to that person. May you be contented and pleased. And may you understand the true causes of happiness. With each exhale, extending to that person. And may your physical body support you with strength. May your life unfold smoothly, with ease. And just feel for a moment as you breathe that warmth to that friend, that relational field that can be created with just those intentions. May you be protected and safe. May you be contented and pleased. And now that same person, with a little slight flavor change, compassion. You know, everybody's suffering in some way. So think of this person. What is their edge? Where are they suffering? Are they caring for a loved one that's a challenge? Are they having financial issues? Issues with their children? You know? Relational issues in their primary relationship. Where are they suffering? And now holding them in your vision and feeling the felt sense of them. Extending to them the simple phrase, I care. I care about this pain, this suffering you are challenged with. And feel that wholesome caring for that suffering of that other. You wish it to be alleviated. And through the caring, may the pain be eased. I care about this pain, this challenge you are enduring. And now appreciative joy. This same person, can you find something that they are joyful about? Some small victory or a large victory or gain or something they've been praised for or something. And think about that in relation to them. And the phrase, may your happiness and good fortune continue. May they increase, not only continue. See if you can feel that joy. See if you can feel that earnest wish for their happiness and good fortune to continue. And now equanimity. Still extending from your heart, this flavor of equanimity. All things arise and pass away. Understanding this deeply brings the greatest happiness, which is peace. May you hold your joys and sorrows in the heart of equanimity and balance. May you hold your joys and sorrows in the heart of equanimity and balance. Extending that wish for them, the possibility that they can have ease with all the changes in their life, the joys and the sorrows. Okay. So when you notice any of these flavors of love, the four faces of love that they've arisen, see if you can just pause and just feel it. Help train the nervous system and the neural pathways to rest there more often and to notice those moments. You can look for them too. So, if you want to spend better part of 4 days exploring this, and each day we'll focus on one of them, and we'll do practices, and there'll be discussions and talks, come to the retreat. Thank you very much. Have a good week.